There is a strange and powerful law in life, an invisible current that pulls some forward while others fall behind, and often the difference lies not in how loudly a man speaks, but in how silently he acts. We've been told that charisma is loud, that leaders must always speak, always shine, always assert, but the truth, the kind of truth that endures after applause fades, is that true influence begins with restraint, with stillness, and with quiet certainty. This is not a lesson taught in schools. It is not printed in the pages of most leadership books. But if you study the greats, the men and women who left lasting impact, you will see a pattern not of noise, but of presence. You will notice how they mastered the art of saying less and doing more. Influence is not created through performance. It is not born from decoration or noise. Real influence, the kind that changes lives, wins loyalty, and draws people toward you like a magnet, starts with inward alignment. When your actions speak louder than your words, you unlock something primal in the hearts of others. They begin to feel something about you that even you might not fully understand. You become someone they trust, not because you promised them anything, but because your consistency proved everything. It is in this spirit that we begin this journey, not to become louder in the world, but to become clearer, stronger, and more focused in our being. People follow those who walk a straight line. They follow those whose footsteps don't wobble, whose decisions don't dance to the tune of fear or opinion. They follow certainty. They follow clarity. And the secret is that you don't need to shout to be clear. You don't need to argue to be right. You don't need to explain yourself when your life is already the evidence. In fact, the more you try to explain, the more you begin to appear Let your discipline do the talking, let your habits do the speaking, and let your presence, solid, quiet, and grounded, do the convincing. Understand this: every time you speak, you give something away. You give away intent, you give away energy, you give away positioning. But when you choose your words carefully, when you speak only when it adds value, your words become rare, and anything that is rare becomes valuable. That is why those who say less often command more. They create mystery, they create respect, and they do something more important than speaking. They listen. And through listening, they gain insight. And with insight, they gain power. There is a power in keeping your strategy quiet, in letting your actions unfold without advertisement, in letting your rise be a surprise. When people don't know your next move, they can't prepare to resist it. When they don't hear you announcing your goals, they can't discredit them. The strongest leaders are not always the loudest. They're the ones who do the most with the least amount of noise. They are feared not because they threaten, but because they deliver. And they are respected not because they demand it, but because they embody it. People follow those they believe in, and belief is not triggered by charm, it is anchored in reliability. If you want people to follow you, stop trying to impress them. Stop trying to win them over with words. Start becoming someone they can count on. Show up when you say you will. Follow through even when it's inconvenient. Be the same person in the dark that you are in the light. Do that enough, and you will not need to ask anyone to believe in you. They will do it naturally. Not because you told them to, but because you gave them reason to. You don't need to sell yourself when your results speak for you. You don't need to argue your position when your progress proves it. And you don't need to explain your methods when your outcomes already justify them. This is the art of saying less and doing more. It is the discipline of speaking with your actions. And the reward is influence that cannot be shaken, reputation that cannot be questioned, and loyalty that cannot be bought. Let the noisy ones exhaust themselves in the race to be seen. Let the talkers burn their energy trying to be heard. You stay silent, stay focused, stay working. Let your presence grow heavy with purpose. Let your silence echo louder than their shouting, because while others are trying to convince the world they matter, you will be out there proving it, and the people will notice. They always do. The world does not reward noise. It rewards results. It does not admire volume. It admires value. And while many confuse visibility for leadership, true leaders are building something deeper than attention. They are constructing character. They are refining the invisible architecture of discipline, responsibility, and purpose. This is what makes people follow without being asked. It is what compels admiration without demand. You cannot fake this kind of gravity. It must be earned. It must be built in private long before it is recognized in public. Every person you look up to, every figure you've ever admired, started their journey by doing something few people ever master. They learned how to work without applause. They learned how to persist in silence. They became so consistent, so reliable, that over time the world had no choice but to notice. And here lies the principle. If you want people to follow you, stop chasing them. Stop chasing praise. Chase mastery. Chase better. Chase the person you know you were born to be. When you align yourself with excellence, you don't need to beg anyone to walk with you. They will ask to walk beside you because your direction becomes magnetic. Silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. The wise man knows that people believe more in what they see than what they hear. He knows that words are cheap, but execution is sacred. That's why he speaks less and studies more. He doesn't try to win arguments, he wins respect. Not through talk, but through transformation. He changes himself, and by doing so, he becomes the kind of man others want to emulate. There's a stillness in that kind of man, a calm certainty, a quiet force that you can feel before he even speaks. To become that kind of person, you must first let go of the need to impress. Let go of the temptation to prove yourself through words. Let your journey prove you. Let your development be your answer. When you wake up early and build your day with discipline, you don't need to post it. You don't need to declare it. The results will reveal it. Your energy will shift, your confidence will rise, and people will feel it even if you never say a word. That is power. That is silent leadership. The secret is not in knowing everything. It's in mastering something. When you do one thing well, when you become excellent in your own domain, people take notice. They begin to look to you for direction. They begin to wonder what you're doing differently. That's how influence begins, not through declarations, but through demonstration. When your habits align with your goals, your whole being becomes congruent. You become one of those rare people who does not just talk about greatness, but lives it quietly, consistently. You see, the people who talk the most often do the least. They spend so much energy convincing others they have none left to build. But you are different. You conserve your power. You harness it. You work in silence not because you fear being seen, but because you understand the value of focus. You don't scatter your energy trying to be everywhere. You concentrate it. You build quietly, patiently, knowing that one day your work will speak on your behalf. And when it does, it will not whisper. It will roar. There is an ancient strength in this path, a timeless principle. From the warriors of old to the leaders of today, the ones who endure are always the ones who mastered themselves first. Before they led others, they led their minds. Before they asked for trust, they earned it from themselves. They became men and women of substance. And when substance enters a room, it doesn't need to announce itself. People feel it, they respect it, and more often than not, they follow it willingly, faithfully, and without resistance. Understand this, your silence is not your limitation, it is your leverage. Your stillness is not passivity, it is power under control. It's the kind of power that moves mountains without a sound, the kind that shapes the world without needing to raise its voice. So speak less, do more, build deeply, move precisely. Be a man or woman who doesn't need to be asked twice because you already acted once. That is how people begin to see you, not just as someone they know, but as someone they trust, as someone they believe in, as someone they will follow. Every empire begins with a decision, not the loud kind, not the kind you shout from rooftops, but the kind you make alone when no one is watching, when no one is listening, when there is no applause to catch your fall or praise your rise. The kind of decision that says, from this moment on, I will no longer beg the world to see me. I will make myself undeniable. That is the cornerstone of influence that lasts, and it is built brick by brick through discipline. Not talent, not talk, but daily discipline. Discipline is the furnace where quiet power is forged. It is the ability to do the hard thing even when no one will ever know you did it. It is the art of consistency without the craving for confirmation. It is waking up earlier, working harder, staying longer, not to impress others, but to impress something higher within yourself. When you master this level of commitment, you become dangerous, because now you cannot be manipulated by praise or crushed by criticism. You are driven by something deeper, your own standard. You must understand this if you want people to follow you. They are not drawn to what you say, they are drawn to what you represent. If you represent discipline, if you carry the quiet strength of a man who is guided by principle and not pressure, people will feel it. They may not be able to describe it, they may not even understand it fully, but they will want to be around it. They will want to be near you because your presence reminds them of something they've been missing: direction. Direction does not need decoration. It does not need noise. A compass does not scream to prove it knows the way. It simply points north over and over without fail. Be that compass. Be the person whose discipline is so reliable it makes others trust themselves more in your presence. Be the one who doesn't sway with the moods of the world but stays fixed, rooted in self-respect, anchored in purpose. That steadiness, that calm in the storm is more attractive than anything you could ever say. You don't become that kind of person by accident. You become it through repetition. You become it by choosing purpose over pleasure, progress over comfort, work over words. And every time you make that choice, you sharpen your edge, you build your core, you deepen your presence, and you extend your influence not by asking for it, but by earning it. Now listen closely, because this is a truth that will serve you for life. Every word you speak carries a cost. Every time you explain yourself, defend yourself, or overexpress yourself, you spend energy that could have been invested in action. People don't follow explanations, they follow examples. And your example, quiet, powerful, consistent, is your true voice. That is your loudest language. That is the leadership people remember. In a world that moves too fast and speaks too often, your restraint will feel like strength. Your pause will feel like confidence. Your silence, when well-timed, will sound like wisdom. You don't need to answer every insult. You don't need to respond to every opinion. Most of the time, the strongest reply is your refusal to react. Your actions are already speaking for you. Your path is already clearing doubt. And your results are already silencing critics. Those who talk the most often reveal the most insecurity. But those who do the most and say the least move with something else entirely: certainty. That certainty comes not from arrogance, but from alignment. When your words, thoughts, and actions all aim in the same direction, you don't need to raise your voice. Your life will carry the tone. Your rhythm will command attention, and people will begin to mirror your energy without even realizing they are doing it. That is the power of inner mastery. That is the secret of silent leadership. And the best part, it cannot be taken from you. It cannot be faked by others. Because what you've built from the inside out, and it will follow you into every room, every challenge, every season of life, not because you demanded it, but because you deserved it. There comes a moment in the journey of every person who chooses mastery when the question changes. It is no longer, what do they think of me? But rather, am I living by my standard? That moment is the turning point. It is the shift from external validation to internal direction. And when it happens, truly happens, you stop seeking permission to move forward. You stop needing applause to feel worthy. You stop adjusting your path to gain approval. You become the source. You become the fire. And that fire burns quietly, but it burns endlessly. People will follow you not because of what you have, but because of what you've become. A man who no longer needs to prove himself is the most powerful man in any room. A woman who has stopped shrinking herself for comfort is the most magnetic presence anyone can encounter. When you live by your standard, when you become the standard, you become unforgettable. And those around you, whether they realize it or not, begin to calibrate to your energy. Not because you told them to, but because it feels like gravity, silent, constant, unshakable. The world doesn't need more talkers, it needs more anchors. More people who don't need the temperature around them to be perfect in order to remain calm. More individuals who are willing to uphold their values even when no one is watching, even when no one agrees. That is where influence is born, in private consistency, in private excellence, in the moments when you choose to do the right thing simply because it is right, not because it will be seen. You must ask yourself this question daily. What am I building when no one is clapping? That answer will tell you everything about who you are becoming. Are you showing up for the praise or for the progress? Are you driven by reaction or by responsibility? You see, influence is not found in the spotlight. It is found in the shadows, in the early hours, in the late nights, in the quiet grind. The spotlight simply reveals what you've been building all along. When you stop talking and start doing, day after day, moment after moment, you no longer need to chase momentum. You become it. You no longer wait for inspiration, you generate it. That's what the world feels when they're around someone who lives by a higher standard. They feel the vibration of integrity, of truth, of alignment. And that resonance is more persuasive than any speech you could give. So speak less of who you are, be who you are. Speak less of what you plan to do, begin doing it. Let others discover the depth of your character not through your declarations, but through their interactions with you. Let your commitment reveal your courage. Let your discipline uncover your direction. Let your presence become the quiet answer to every doubt, every fear, every hesitation in the minds of those around you. Because when your life becomes your message, you no longer need to explain. When your energy becomes consistent, you no longer need to advertise. And when your standard becomes visible in every detail, from the way you show up to the way you think, people will follow, not out of obligation, but out of admiration. You don't need to lead with words when your actions are writing the story. And the best stories, the ones we remember, the ones we quote, the ones that shape lives, are the ones lived with conviction, not just spoken with confidence. That's the real secret. And it's been hiding in plain sight all along. There is a power that moves beneath the surface, a quiet influence that does not shout, does not boast, and yet it shapes the thoughts, emotions, and allegiances of everyone it touches. This power is not born from loud victories or public declarations. It is born from consistency, integrity, and presence. And when you master this power, you no longer have to convince others to follow you. They will follow you because they trust you. And trust, once earned through action, becomes unshakable loyalty. Loyalty is never bought, it is built. And it is not built through words, but through reliability. When people see you show up again and again, when they see that you mean what you say, and more importantly, that you follow through long after the mood has passed, they begin to feel something rare in today's world, safety. And people follow those who make them feel safe, not by protecting them from life, but by showing them how to move through it with strength. The man who speaks less but moves with intention becomes a pillar in the lives of others. He becomes a reference point, a compass. His words carry weight because they are few, and his actions speak long before his mouth opens. In his silence there is direction. In his stillness there is momentum. And in his loyalty to his own principles, others find reason to offer theirs in return. But make no mistake, this kind of loyalty is not given easily. It is tested. It is challenged. People will watch you closely. They will listen not to your words, but to the echoes of your behavior. They will ask themselves, consciously or not, can I trust this person with my time, with my respect, with my effort? And you will answer without saying a word. You will answer through how you show up when it's inconvenient. You will answer through how you treat others when they have nothing to offer you. You will answer through how you carry yourself when no one is looking. This is the long game of influence, and it is the only game that matters, because popularity may win attention, but character wins devotion. Charisma may get a crowd, but consistency builds a following. And those who follow you because of what you've proven, those are the people who will stay when things get hard. Those are the people who will support your vision even when it isn't trending. Those are the people who will stand behind you, not because you asked them to, but because you became someone worth standing behind. You cannot fake this. You cannot manufacture this. You must become this. You must earn it the old-fashioned way, with discipline, with focus, with delayed gratification. You must silence your need to be understood and amplify your need to be aligned. Because when you are aligned, when your actions match your intentions and your presence reflects your principles, you don't just attract followers, you attract believers. You attract those who are willing to walk with you, work with you, build with you, not for the promise of reward, but for the honor of association. And that, my friend, is a different kind of leadership. It is not based on fear. It is not based on pressure. It is not based on manipulation. It is based on being, on becoming, on living a truth so deeply that it radiates from you without effort. That is the kind of leader people remember. That is the kind of leader people trust. And that is the kind of leader who does not need to ask for loyalty because he already commands it. You will know you're on the right path when the conversations about you shift from volume to tone. Not the tone of noise, but the tone of reverence. When your name begins to carry weight in rooms you've never entered. When others speak of your presence without ever quoting your words, that is the measure of quiet greatness. It is not the result of hype. It is not the result of strategy. It is the inevitable result of living with purpose so consistently that you become a standard by which others measure themselves. Greatness does not chase validation, it generates it. It does not make announcements, it makes impact. The man who walks with certainty doesn't need to prove anything. His presence becomes a message. His calm becomes a signal. His direction becomes contagious. And the fewer words he uses, the clearer his authority becomes. Because the deeper the truth, the fewer the explanations required. The deeper the wisdom, the softer the voice. You must understand this. Respect is not something you ask for. It is something you cultivate. It is grown moment by moment in the garden of self-discipline. You plant it when you hold your tongue instead of arguing. You water it when you keep your word when no one remembers it but you. You protect it when you resist the need to broadcast your moves and instead allow your results to emerge without fanfare. Slowly, over time, your name begins to stand for something, and people begin to whisper, not in fear, but in admiration. That is real influence. The world doesn't need more performers. It needs more pillars. People who don't crack under pressure. People who do what they say they'll do, even if it takes longer than expected. People who don't change their character just because the room changes. And when you become one of those people, you will find that others will begin to ask for your presence without you ever offering it. They will feel something in you that gives them peace, and that peace comes from the power of consistency. Consistency is the invisible crown. It is not glamorous, it is not exciting, but it is the most attractive force in a chaotic world. When everything else is unpredictable, the one who remains steady becomes the one who is sought after, not because they make noise, but because they represent something rare. And rare things are always respected. They are always remembered. They are always honored. You want people to whisper your name in respect? Then become the kind of person whose habits cannot be shaken by emotion. Become the kind of person who is strong enough to remain silent when the room is loud. Become the kind of person who chooses humility over spotlight and purpose over popularity. When you do that, people will start to notice, not because you forced them to, but because you became impossible to ignore. The best part is this: no one can take it from you. No one can mimic it. Because it's not an act, it's a foundation. It's not a mask, it's a mission. And that mission lives in your bones. It fuels your mornings. It sharpens your decisions. It drives your days. This is not about being perfect. It's about being principled. It's about rising again and again until the pattern becomes your identity. And that identity becomes your influence. So speak less. And when you speak, speak with weight. Live your values so deeply that your silence has meaning. Become the calm in the storm, the stillness in the noise, the clarity in the confusion. When you do that, people will not just respect you. They will lean on you. They will follow you, not because you asked them to, but because you showed them how. There will come a time when someone looks at you, not for what you have, not for what you've done, but for how you move. They'll watch the way you walk into a room. They'll feel the weight of your silence. They'll see how you pause before speaking, how your words carry precision, not filler. And in that moment, something will shift. They will begin to take you seriously, because when a person learns to say less and do more, their words become charged with something most people lack: meaning. We are living in an age of endless noise. People speak before they think. They react before they reflect. And in doing so, they dilute their presence. They weaken their stance. But you are different. You do not speak for attention. You speak for intention. You do not broadcast your moves to feel relevant. You move in silence to remain powerful, because you've learned that energy is a currency and you choose to spend yours only where it builds value. When you speak, it should be like the strike of a bell in a quiet temple, clear, strong, and unforgettable, not because you raised your voice, but because you raised the standard. And people will begin to mirror that energy. They will start adjusting their behavior around you, not out of fear, but out of respect, because when you speak only when necessary, every word becomes necessary. When you walk your path without apology, your direction becomes persuasive. And when your behavior aligns with your values, your life becomes leadership. There is a dignity in restraint, a nobility in not having to explain your worth to the world. The most powerful people are not those who try to convince others of their greatness, but those who embody it so clearly that others begin to question their own excuses. Be that person, the one who doesn't flinch under pressure, the one who doesn't gossip, the one who doesn't boast. Because when you don't leak your energy through meaningless chatter, you retain a force within you that others feel without ever understanding it. People will feel your power in the way you stand, in the way you listen, in the way you hold your gaze, not with arrogance, but with calm certainty. And that certainty doesn't come from words. It comes from the hours no one saw, the choices no one clapped for, the sacrifices you made not for credit, but for character. That's what people sense when they follow someone with conviction. They aren't following a personality, they are following a principle, a rhythm, a presence. You don't need to shout to be heard. You don't need to be everywhere to be known. You need to be solid, rooted, clear. You need to be someone whose presence doesn't depend on approval, whose identity doesn't fluctuate with public opinion, because when the world gets noisy and the crowd starts to sway, the one who knows where he's going becomes the one everyone else looks to for guidance, not the loudest, but the most grounded. And remember this, presence is built through patience. Power is built through practice. You don't rush into influence, you rise into it. You become it through thousands of quiet repetitions, through choices made in solitude, through standards kept when no one's watching. And slowly your life begins to emit something rare, something strong, something sacred. And others will sense it. They will always understand it, but they will respect it. And more often than not, they will follow it. There is something deeply powerful about the person who moves in silence while everyone else broadcasts their ambitions. While others announce their plans, list their goals, and seek applause before they've lifted a finger, you remain quiet, focused, refined. You let the world wonder, not because you're hiding, but because you're honing. Not because you're unsure, but because you know. And that knowing, that silent certainty, is more magnetic than any speech, more compelling than any slogan. When people cannot predict your next move, they become curious. When they can't define your every motive, they become alert. When you stop sharing every detail, they begin to watch more closely. And that attention, that subtle shift in how people perceive you, begins to build something far more valuable than applause. It builds intrigue. And intrigue, when earned through authenticity and backed by action, becomes influence of the highest kind. There is a reason legends are born in silence. The deepest roots grow underground. The strongest structures are built before the world ever sees the blueprint. You do not need to show every layer of your foundation. You do not need to explain every brick you lay. Your life is not a performance. It is a process. And those who value depth over display understand this. They move deliberately, with care, with precision. They do not chase attention. They build attraction. And in that difference lies the entire strategy of quiet power. Let the world think you're slow while you're simply being thorough. Let them believe you've disappeared while you're simply developing. Let them write you off while you're writing the next chapter. Because when you finally emerge, when the silence breaks and the results speak, it will not be a surprise. It will be a revelation. And the same people who once questioned your path will now seek your guidance. Not because you told them to, but because you became someone worth asking. In a world obsessed with speed, be still. In a world addicted to noise, be quiet. In a world fixated on visibility, be invisible until it's time. There is no rush to prove, no need to convince, no reason to explain a vision still under construction. What you are building is not for them to understand. It is for them to experience later, when it's ready, when it's real. And until that day, keep your focus sacred. Keep your process private. Keep your energy preserved. This discipline, to build in silence, to work without updates, to develop without documentation, is rare. But it is this very rarity that gives your journey weight. Because while others are counting likes, you're stacking wins. While they seek praise, you're collecting skills. While they aim to be seen, you're aiming to become. And in the end, becoming is always more powerful than appearing, because what you become cannot be taken, cannot be faked, and cannot be ignored. So let the world wonder, let them guess, let them fill the silence with their own assumptions. And you, keep building, keep refining, keep rising, one step at a time, one standard at a time, one quiet, determined action at a time, until the results become undeniable, until your presence is no longer questioned, until the very people who underestimated your silence are the first to follow your strength. There will be a moment you won't announce, won't dramatize, won't even plan for, a moment when everything you've built in silence begins to speak, not through words, but through impact, through outcomes, through quiet authority that turns heads and shifts energy. And in that moment, something profound will happen. People will realize you were the one who stayed grounded, the one who didn't flinch, the one who didn't need the stage to create change, the one they should have been watching all along. This is not about revenge. It's not about proving anyone wrong. It's about rising so steadily that there's nothing left to debate. You no longer have to speak on your behalf, because your results will echo louder than anything you could ever say. You no longer need to remind people who you are, because your consistency has already told them. You've earned their respect, not through argument, but through alignment. And now, without forcing it, without even trying, they follow. You see, people don't follow pressure, they follow presence. They follow conviction. They follow someone who embodies their future before they even see it for themselves. And when you become that person, you stop needing attention, you become attention. Not through performance, but through posture. Through the way you move, through the way you handle stress, through the way you remain calm in chaos, focused under fire, grounded in a world of grasping. You are no longer influenced by the moods of others. You are no longer affected by shallow praise or fleeting criticism, because you've built something deeper within yourself, around yourself, and far beyond yourself. And it's that depth that people begin to respect. That depth that makes them lean in. That depth that makes them trust you without needing an explanation. Leadership is not a role you step into, it is a person you become. And once you become that person, the right people will follow. They will come, not because you persuaded them, but because your presence made it impossible not to. You've walked the talk without having to say the words. You've sacrificed when no one was looking. You've chosen discipline when distractions whispered sweetly. And now you carry something they want. Clarity. There is no greater influence than clarity. No greater magnetism than knowing exactly who you are and what you're here to do. And when others feel that from you, when they sense that your silence is rooted in strength and not weakness, they will begin to see you differently. Not as someone chasing success, but as someone who defines it. Not as someone seeking approval, but as someone living above it. That moment, when they look at you and finally see what you've always known in yourself, that is not a finish line. That is the beginning of a new kind of leadership, one rooted in service, not status, in legacy, not labels, in vision, not volume. And from that place, your influence multiplies, not because you seek it, but because your life commands it. And so you keep walking, quietly, strongly, unapologetically, not for the followers but for the mission, not for the applause but for the alignment. And as you walk, others fall in line, not behind you but beside you, because that is what true leadership does. It doesn't pull people forward by force, it draws them forward by example. Now we arrive at the end, or perhaps more truly, the beginning of a life lived not by noise, but by resonance. A life defined not by the number of words spoken, but by the depth of action taken. And if there's one truth to carry with you from this entire journey, it is this: say less. Do this. Become the person worth following, not for what you say, but for how you live. You don't need to raise your voice to raise the standard. You don't need to chase others to create influence. You don't need to impress the world to make an impact. You simply need to do the work and keep doing it quietly, boldly, without detour, without delay. Let your results whisper, then roar. Let your habits carve the story of your greatness. Let your values speak when you do not, because in the silence of your integrity, there is a thunder the world cannot ignore. True influence cannot be forced. It cannot be faked, and it cannot be fabricated overnight. It must be built, brick by brick, action by action, through the days when it's hard, through the nights when you're tired, through the seasons when no one sees you, because what you build in those unseen moments becomes the foundation of everything visible later. It becomes the legacy others will one day admire, even if they never understand the price you paid to create it. You've walked through each part of this journey not merely to be inspired, but to be transformed, because transformation begins the moment you stop performing and start becoming, when you stop talking and start walking, when you stop trying to be seen and start making yourself worth noticing. And the beauty of this path is that it doesn't require permission. It doesn't even require a crowd. All it asks is your willingness to commit to the quiet work that shapes character. And when that work is done, when your foundation is solid, nothing can shake you. Others will wonder how you did it. They will ask what the secret was. They will try to trace your steps. But they'll never be able to replicate your silence, because that silence was not emptiness, it was discipline. It was vision. It was the refusal to be distracted by mediocrity. And that refusal is what sets you apart. There's a reason the wisest are often the quietest, the strongest are often the calmest, the most respected are rarely the most visible. Influence is not loud, it's lasting. It's not showy, it's stable. And when you embrace that truth, when you make peace with the path of silent greatness, you will begin to rise in a way that no man, no circumstance, and no noise can stop. So from this day forward, let your life do the convincing. Let your results do the explaining. Let your discipline do the speaking. And above all, say less. Do this. Be the one who leads, even when no one's watching. Be the one who builds, even when no one's clapping. Be the one who lives a life so aligned, so authentic, that people cannot help but follow. Not because you told them to, but because you became the example they didn't know they were waiting for. This is the way of quiet greatness.